Coming in today with a repeat of one of our more popular episodes and also an update. This is wonderful. The case of Lost in the Gorge, the Martin family disappearance, is now solved. That episode I covered in late August 2025, and it was called Lost in the Gorge, the Martin family disappearance. I'm going to replay the episode here to refresh your memory, and I'll add the update at the end.
Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same. Welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jen Chambers. Today, we explore a haunting Oregon mystery. The unexplained disappearance of the Martin family, Kenneth, Barbara, Virginia, Susan, and Barbie, in the Columbia River Gorge on December 7th, 1958. It was supposed to be a festive day trip, but became a nightmare that echoes more than 6 decades later. Today's episode is called Lost in the Gorge, the Martin family disappearance. The Martins, who were from Portland's Roseway neighborhood, held a cherished tradition. Mr. Martin dressed as Santa at their annual Christmastime dinner for all the neighbors. According to the website All That's Interesting, quote, 54-year-old Kenneth Martin put on a Santa suit, handed out candy canes to neighbors, unquote. Sources say that collecting greens for Christmastime was a long-standing tradition for their family, and they would bring them home to make decorations and Christmas wreaths for friends and family. Kenneth, who was 54, Barbara, who was 48, their daughter Barbie, who was 14 and a freshman in high school, their daughter Virginia, who was 13, and Susan, age 11, had all set out that morning for their regular holiday event. The family had one other member, the older brother named Donald, who was 28, and he was a veteran of the U.S. Navy. He was going to grad school at Columbia University in New York City at the time. Part 2. Last confirmed sights. On Sunday, December 7th, in 1958, the family had departed in their cream and red 1954 Ford station wagon for the Columbia River Gorge to go collect greenery. By late afternoon, the family stopped for 5 gallons of gas at a town called Cascade Locks, which was about 40 miles from the family's home in Portland. They arrived there at about 4 p.m., and the station owner, Dean Baxter, confirmed this by tracing the receipts. A short while after that, a waitress who was in Hood River, named Clara York, served the family at a snack bar there. And this location was 20 miles east of Cascade Locks. Clara York described Kenneth as wearing a tan zip-up jacket, and Barbara, the mother, as wearing a black printed dress, a plaid jacket, and a navy blue coat. And Barbie, the oldest, was dressed in rolled cuffed jeans and a beige coat. And Kenneth was carrying cameras in his arms. As evening fell, motorists on the other side of the river, the Washington side, said that they saw a car matching the Martins' car description on the banks of the Columbia River, but nobody had reported any signs of the family returning home. Part 3. Staircase to Disappearance. Back in Portland, the first person who was noticed as missing was Kenneth, who didn't show up at his job where he worked the next day at the Eccles Home Service Electric Company. Then the girls were all marked as missing from school. Finally, Kenneth's boss reported the family as missing that night, and police showed up at their home to search at about 11 o'clock p.m. The Martins simply had never returned at all. At home, there were dishes that sat drying in the dish rack. There was a wet load of laundry in the washer, and Kenneth's Santa suit lay untouched. Their bank accounts, which had not insubstantial amounts of money in them, weren't used. All of this suggested that they had no plan to abandon their home. A massive search began. Multnomah and Hood River counties both started a huge campaign to find the family. They used helicopters, crag rats rescue teams, and sheriff officers to scour the whole gorge. One search had them following tire tracks that were spotted near the Dalles, which was a path that led off of a cliff into the Columbia River. Now, a suspicious abandoned vehicle, which was a white 1951 Chevrolet, was found in the Cascade Locks on the day the family disappeared. But the car had been stolen, and it was actually registered to someone in Venice, Los Angeles. Near this stolen car, officers found a stolen .38 caliber handgun that was covered in dried blood and had been tossed into the undergrowth. Although the gun was turned back into the police department, it wasn't processed as evidence. They did, however, trace the serial number to a batch of guns that was stolen from a Meyer and Frank department store 2 years before the families disappeared. And in a crazy plot twist, the oldest child of the Martins, Donald Martin, had been once accused of stealing the gun and the sporting goods from that Meyer and Frank. He had worked there at the time. Part 4, 2 Bodies, Many Mysteries. There were some developments in the case. On December 8th, which was the day after the Martin family disappeared, 2 ex-convicts were, quote, arrested for car theft in Hood River County in connection to the abandoned Chevrolet, unquote, according to KOIN-TV. One of these ex-convicts, who was named Roy Light, was also reportedly seen in the same restaurant as the Martins on the night that they disappeared. The waiter who reported this information said that those 2 men, the ex-cons, left the restaurant at the same time that the Martins did. The crime, of course, was the cause for a lot of tips on the police hotlines. One of these was a man who owned an orchard somewhere on the eastern side of Portland. And he said that he saw a man and woman picking greenery on a Native American burial ground. He further told the police that he had seen a whole bunch of buzzards flying near that area in the week after he saw them. Though, after he told the police, the area was searched, and there was nothing of note found at the site. The other clues they found didn't pan out either. On December 28th of that year, someone found a glove near where the stolen car had been. It was similar to one that Barbara might have worn, but it wasn't conclusively proven to be hers. The Martins' car was also reportedly seen in various locations, on the freeway, in Oregon, Washington, Billings, Montana, and Burlington, Iowa. But by February of 1959, the next year, more searchers had led to tire tracks that went off of a cliff in the Dalles on the banks of the Columbia River. These tracks were proven to match tires as such on the Ford that the Martins were driving. Paint chips from that area, once they were analyzed by the FBI, matched that of a car that could have been their Ford as well. So this possibility that the Martins might have driven off the cliff by accident or on purpose brought the investigation in a new direction. The water level of the lake behind Bonneville Dam was brought down by 5 feet by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers so that they could search that area. Even using the sonar technology of the time, they still found nothing. Now, in May 1959, almost 6 months later, a few things happened in the case. On May 1st, a river driller near the Dalles caught something heavy on its anchor. Whatever it was got loose before the drillers could pull it up. But the next day, on May 2nd, tragedies surfaced. Susan's body, was found near the Bonneville Dam, and Virginia's body surfaced the next morning, about 25 miles upstream. Now, these locations were about 46 miles from where the family was last seen, but they were downriver. Both girls were thought to have drowned. They were heavily decomposed, and there weren't any signs of foul play, technically. And this is interesting because the first medical technician who fingerprinted them once they were recovered was said that they were certain that they found bullet holes in the girls. But the official report eventually stated that they died by drowning. There were also traces of metals found in Susan's clothes, and that included aluminum. But interestingly, right across the river from where the car might have got in the water, there was an aluminum smelting plant. So one thought is that the car might have been knocked off the edge of the river by the drilling rig for the plant, and then it was submerged. And then when they drilled later, it might have dredged up the car from where it was stuck and allowed the girls' bodies to be set free from the car. So going on that theory, the authorities underwent another search with both helicopters and sonar, but nothing was found. Kenneth, Barbara, and Barbie have never been located, and theories diverge. Part 5, Theories and Suspicions. So theories range from an accidental plunge into the gorge, where Kenneth might have driven off the cliff, to the possibility of targeted violence. Those 2 ex-convicts that had been found and arrested couldn't be tied to the family conclusively, so that idea didn't fit. But a bunch of things came in that were conflicting and confusing to the whole case. One person wrote a letter to the Oregon Journal newspaper in 1961, and they stated that a resident of nearby Camas, Oregon, had a story that on December 7th, 1958, which was the night that the Martins disappeared, the person who wrote had been parked underneath of a railroad bridge near there, and they saw a car go, quote, under the bridge towards the locks, unquote. After that, they heard screams a few minutes later, but they couldn't see anything once they went to go check it out. So interesting, but not very useful. Now, Detective Walter Graven, who had been on the case, he died in 1988, and he always believed that the father had been murdered at the very least, and then the car was pushed into the river, as per different eyewitness recollections. He was said to have always thought that they'd be able to solve the case once they could find the Martins' car. Part 6, Hope in the Depths. Now, nothing happened for quite a while, but in 2009, a journalist from the Oregonian newspaper, who was named Margie Boulay, she garnered interest for a new search of the Columbia River and the Cascade Locks in order to find the Martins' car. They used both LiDAR and GPS technology, but they couldn't find a trace of the car during that search. Then we have to fast forward to 2024. A man named Archer Mayo was a diver, and he was fascinated by the case. He tried many times, but in 2024, he found a submerged vehicle near the Cascade Locks, 50 feet down. It was buried in silt and covered with mussel shells and salmon guts. But the story wasn't quite over yet. The Hood River County Sheriff's Office began a delicate recovery. They were hoping to confirm via VIN numbers and perhaps maybe recover bodies or other evidence. They believe the car to be the Martins, though no bodies were found inside. They found several other cars in the same area, but so far there's nothing conclusive. Barbara, Kenneth, and Barbie Martin have still never been found. As of March 11th, 2025, the case remains active and open as the investigators work to remove the car from the 50 years of sediment and sift out more of the mystery. Cold cases like this haunt us because ordinary families don't usually just vanish into oblivion like this. These are communal scars in that the public still can't forget what happened to the family. Their oldest son, Donald, eventually moved to Hawaii. He worked as a teacher, and he died there without ever knowing what happened to them. Was it foul play? Was it robbery? Was it an accident? And can we assume of the 3 who are still missing, maybe Barbie could still be out there somewhere? If she's alive, she could be 82 years old. It's possible. I feel so sad for this family and friends. They're never to know the answer of what happened to this poor family. They were just out there trying to make holiday joy, and they just absolutely disappeared. Whether accidental tragedy or dark crime, the Martin family's fate is a puzzle. It's born of grief and wilderness. This case slipped through the cracks. But I feel like we may finally find answers. If you have any information about this, contact the Hood River Sheriff's Department. And if you have other photos or memories or local lore from your area, reach out. I'd love to continue those stories. Email me at scdtpod@gmail.com. That is scdtpod@gmail.com. I'm Jen Chambers, and this was Same Crime, Different Time, Lost in the Gorge. Maybe stay close to home and keep your family safe. Thanks for listening.
As I mentioned in the episode, which you just heard, Archie Mayo was a researcher who was very invested in the case. And in late 2024, he was a diver, and he had been trying to find the family, was very dedicated to trying to find this family. He made the find that cracked the case. CBS News reported on April 17th, 2026, that he had found remains. These remains had been tested and DNA matched to the bodies of Kenneth and Barbara Martin, along with that of their daughter, Barbie. The Hood River County Sheriff determined that they could find no evidence of a crime being committed at that time. So it was found in a location that was one of the possible locations that it had gone over, and Archie kept looking. Part of it was difficult in the recovery of the car, and Archie looked and looked, but part of it was the way that the shifting sediment had buried it. It was almost covered in a cement-like mud, very, very thick. The divers were only able to retrieve the frame of the car at first, and Archie Mayo later found human remains, which were then turned over to the sheriff department and later partially identified. Some of the skeletons were too degraded because they'd been in water for so long. But Archie also had found, and this is eerie, a camera case that belonged to Kenneth, and the camera case included his name and address that was labeled on it, some film, and part of a shoe, along with some seatbelt buckles. Kenneth talked in the article about how maybe it would be kind of cool if the film was eventually developed and able to publish an article or a book about the case. And I think that his work in this case is really commendable. A quote from him in that CBS News report says, quote, "It's not going to get more resolved than it is now, and so that feels good," he told the station. "And that really lets us write the last chapter of that book," unquote. Again, that was from the CBS News report. I am so grateful that the family of the Martins has found some closure. That was a really eerie thing to happen. It's so tragic. But I'm so grateful and glad whenever these cases find some kind of resolution. So I'm happy to report that. And thank you very much for listening, as always. Please come back. Take care of yourself and each other. And thanks again. This has been Jen Chambers for Same Crime, Different Time.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com.